Hello, everyone. To begin, I think we can start. Yes, we can. Hello, everyone. To begin this afternoon, I would like to acknowledge the First Nations, First Storytellers, and traditional owners of the land I'm broadcasting from, the Gadigal people of the Aurora Nation, and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters, and culture. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and emerging, and to any First Nations people watching, and to the elders of the lands this recording might reach. This land was never ceded, so it always was and always will be First Nations land. I'm incredibly proud of the way Hachette publish and nurture emerging writers, and today I'm thrilled to be able to have a conversation with a very talented writer who is publishing her debut novel in September this year. I just realised I should have introduced myself. Hi, I'm Vanessa Radnidge from Hachette Publishing Company, and I'm talking today with Ruth McIver, who is just there. Hi, Ruth. Hi. I just also want to let everyone know I will be watching the chat and probably writing some things down and also watching the time. So if my eyes kind of are moving around, I'm not deranged. I am just concentrating on many things. So let me introduce Ruth. Ruth McIver is a Melbourne-based crime writer who grew up in Perth, Western Australia, and also in the US. Ruth's first as yet unpublished novel, Nothing Gold, was selected to be pitched at the Bloody Scotland Crime Festival in 2014 and was runner-up in the inaugural Banjo Awards in 2018. Ruth's unpublished novel in verse, The Sunset Club, written in 2014, was adapted for the stage and highly commended in the Anne Elder category by the Fellowship of Australian Writers. Ruth received her PhD in 2019 from Curtin University. In 2018, Ruth won the Richell Prize, a prize to enable emerging writers to have the time and money to concentrate on their writing, for her manuscript, I Shot the Devil. I'm very pleased that this brilliant novel is being released simultaneously in Australia by Hachette and the UK by Headline in September 2021. And don't be surprised if we have some more big announcements about this novel soon, because they are coming. I was lucky enough to be one of the judges on the Richell Prize in 2018, and we were all blown away by Ruth's talent and the power of her story. So hello, Ruth McIver.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here today to share your experiences on writing, on balancing the creative process with life and lockdown, and to talk about your path to publication. Every path to publication is different, but every book that finds a publishing house to back it has to have the talent and the story to warrant a publishing house taking a risk. So today I wanted to talk to you because we've got a lot of emerging writers here, I hope. I want to talk about a number of things. I want to talk about your publishing journey, your book, and some of the advice that you could give writers.
Yeah.
So I wanted to start with some questions from me, but I will keep an eye on the comments. And at the end of the session, we'll have about 15 minutes where we can answer questions from anyone that is watching. I'm going to start with a question that sounds really simple.
Okay.
But
I
think it's a really important one for any writer to sort of understand why they do what they do. So why do you write?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I don't want to sound, sort of pretentious when I say this, but I feel like I write because I don't really have an option. I would be writing even if I never got published, and I, would be writing if I was bad. I would be writing if I got a million comments to tell me to stop writing. I've been writing since I was 8 years old, and I was illustrating these weird books about my Cabbage Patch dolls going into like dark forests. They were very like Grimm's fairy tale with a stranger danger theme. But hugely that was like an escape, kind of a mechanism for escape for me. But it's like, and, to quote Joan Didion on this one, like, we tell ourselves stories in order to live. And for me, that was sort of an early survival mechanism, as well as a kind of like, the mechanics of my imagination. My brother was a really early reader. Like, he was reading when he was like 2. He was reading my mum's Mills and Boons and cookbook. And he's 4 years older than me. So we were a reading sort of family, and, my mum would take us to the library, and like, she'd be like, you can only go twice this week and you will, you will ration those books, and we wouldn't. But it was like reading and writing were just sort of what it was like my lifeblood, and making up stories. So there wasn't another option for me. And to be honest, I wasn't particularly good at anything else. So that's kind of why I write.
I love that. I love that quote. We tell ourselves stories so that we can live. Is that was it?
Yeah, it's how we make sense of the world. And for me, I guess there's like probably strong psychoanalytical reason too. But like, I just have memories of myself kind of daydreaming, especially because I grew up around the water a lot, the ocean, and just kind of like just hours in my head making up these stories and stuff, and riffing on books that I'd read. And so it was just kind of like, it was just something that I always had done. But that said, the journey from, say, being someone who always made up stories and wrote and knew that they wanted to do that, and the idea of becoming an author or a novelist, the leap is a quantum leap, because no matter how confident you are, there's still some kind of, it's like going on to the other side of the mirror. It's like, it is a quantum leap. That's the only way I can kind of describe it, because it takes so much more to get to that place. So
was that something that you like, that you wrote stories and you loved reading and you admired writers, but was that something that you thought you could do yourself? Was there a moment where that realization came?
I honestly never thought that I would. I mean, besides from like, I was obsessed with like Flashdance and Nadia Comaneci, and I wanted to be like a gymnast and dancer too. But there was never like a moment that I wanted to be anything else. It wasn't like the weird thing is, I had no doubt that would happen, but I had none of the mechanics or pragmatics or discipline even to figure out what it would take to be a novelist per se, and like how that would actually happen. So that's where I sort of floundered later on and encountered difficulties. And then, and I think we'll probably get onto this, but like, then when you start to kind of collect rejections and things like that, because I received so much encouragement early on, and I got away with a lot. And, there were things that I really needed to improve, but I didn't, because I was just kind of being, it was being confirmed. Yes, I'm a really good writer, but there were so many things that I was like lacking in, and so many kind of skills that I needed to have, because it's not just the kind of like having talent or, promise. It's having all these other skills that are required. So yes, only doubt kind of crept in later when all of those things happen, and the commercial realities hit in, because I had a very romantic view of it. It was just like, this is my destiny, and and that's just gonna happen magically. But I didn't think about the steps that it would take.
So if once your intention was to try and be published,
yes,
looking back, if you could talk to Ruth back then, if you could time travel back to then, and you could say to yourself, this is what you should know, this is what will help you, what are some of the things you would tell yourself?
Well, some of the stuff I think also, like, it really is like it's lived experience and it's learned for a reason. So, you know, some of those things I think it's like, you know, going in Back to the Future, like when you go and alter things, like you kind of mess up other stuff. So like I certainly could have used a lot less floundering time. So yeah, like I would still tell myself that, but some of it I think is just necessary and you can only learn it through experience. I could say it to someone else, but they're not going to take that on board until they experience it. But yeah, basically what I would sort of say to myself would be about discipline and about like carving out and really valuing time. To be more, obviously, to be more pragmatic about those sort of things, and to have a kind of like an action plan, so to speak. So that kind of would have been some of the things that I would have said to myself. Like, I mean, this is going to make me sound really silly, but I don't mind. But like when I was like 24, I entered the Vogel with my, like, I think it was like a first draft or even like a second or third draft. Like, I feel like writers now that are listening to this that are 24 are so much more savvy. But like, this is how naive I was. I entered it and it was like, it's like a person who buys a lottery ticket and doesn't win and is like, well, what the hell? Like I was like, I didn't win. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to give up. I was just shocked and appalled. And I was like, oh, you're going to get like, even though I knew, like, one of my idols was Sylvia Plath. She had like, you know, a wall of rejection slips. It was sort of like I intellectually understood that, but emotionally I didn't. And it was like, that would be one thing. And the other thing I would sort of tell myself was, and this is again one of those, you have to go through it to kind of like really know it, especially coming from like a poetry writing background, short story novella background. Writing a novel, especially what became a crime fiction novel and a procedural crime novel, which is super plot heavy, I didn't realize you're going to encounter roadblocks all the way. You don't just like crack the shits and then just like, you know, give up for like 3 weeks or something. You have to actually sit down and write through your problems. So you work out your plot issues or plot problems by actually writing. And I just didn't get that. I thought, oh, there's something really wrong with me. Like I have a problem. I'm just like mentally not organized enough. I'm not, you know, maybe I'm not intelligent enough. Maybe I'm just not this kind of writer. And it's like, no, everybody has that. That's like the process. That's story, you know. So yeah, like that's something I would really go back and tell myself.
I think that's really important. I think that's really important for every writer to know that, you know, not every day writing is a good day. And not everything always comes together. So, but you have to be brave. You have to be bold. You have to back yourself like you did entering the Vogel. But you also, like, I mean, that's brave. That's what you have to do as a writer. But I think it's also knowing that you have to like give the best possible chance to yourself, and that means getting that draft polished and polished and polished.
Well, I didn't know anything about. I really didn't know anything about editing. Like I had done an honors degree in like creative writing and history. It was only when I went to RMIT and did study professional editing, corporate writing, all of that sort of stuff, and learned a lot about the actual mechanics of submissions. And then I was really embarrassed. And I have to say also, like, I'll be really transparent about this. I don't have dyslexia, but I have dyscalculia, and dyscalculia and like dyslexia are kind of like cousins in a way. So I really, really struggle with, so with dyscalculia, it's not just like getting numbers backwards and things like that, which is also really problematic in plotting in novels, because you have to like my concept of time is really, really peculiar. It actually sort of affects my organizational capacity. So that also informs how long it took me to write my first novel. Organizing information and things like that was really, really difficult. Now I have systems and things like that. And but that also was a difficulty for me. And to be honest, like I struggled so much in school. It was only until I was allowed to stop doing math and things like that that I started really excelling and that sort of thing. But like my grammar and all of those sort of things, they were appalling. Like that to me is maths and science. Like my brain doesn't work very well with that. So I had to work so hard. Like it was like a good 8 years of like, working on that, because it affected my syntax. It affected a lot of things. So, so it's sort of like, I had a lot of obstacles too, in terms of like getting better on the line even. Like I'd been praised for all this, like, sort of, I guess what you would say, and I don't want to sound conceited, but it's like raw talent. But it's like, hey, if you can't, if you don't know where to put a comma and you're like really struggling, like with that sort of stuff, you're not going to get far. Like it's like after a certain point, people are going to stop babying you and you're going to really, really struggle. So that's kind of where I started to really have to work on that and a lot harder. And what I usually do, and what I had to do, was hire editors to also go over my work, because like I feel like I'm quite strong with the structural stuff, but with the line-to-line stuff, I don't see a lot of things too. So that's another thing I'd also tell people that are emerging. Some people are bloody fantastic natural editors. If you're not and you want to like submit, I would say investing in just getting, like, just paying someone. If you can't do a friend swap, I get people to look over my work all the time because, I'm not strong on that level.
I love your tenacity. I love your determination, but I also love the work that you've obviously put in to like keep getting better and better and better. Like I think that's a really inspiring thing for emerging writers to hear,
Well, I mean, it's amazing to me that I have a PhD because, like I said, I mean, I struggled so much with having this learning disability. And back in the 80s, people didn't give you there just wasn't any kind of like remedial programs that really helped me. And in fact, it just damaged my confidence. So luckily I had this kind of like fire inside me that it was like, and also just a sense of like, revenge. Good for a crime writer. And that was like, I'm going to show you, to get the PhD was shocking to me because like I just struggled so much, with certain aspects of schooling and academia because of those barriers. But
bravo! I dipped my lid because that's hard work, but it's also passion, and I think that's the other thing that you need to have for writing. Passion.
You really do, because it's like there are parts of it that are just awful. And like I've been speaking to friends that are writing during have been writing during the pandemic, and I know there are very few people that have been hyperproductive. I feel like we can't know what it's doing to our brain because we've never kind of really been through this in our lifetime. But a lot of it is sort of sweating bullets. It's like it's all just like slog. It's hard work at the moment. There's not a lot of flow state going on. And that's kind of what you go for. It's like your runner's high, but if you're not getting that, you're just working and working. So you have to have that kind of commitment. And for me also, it's like my first book took me so long, but like, I didn't have Christmas. I didn't go on, like all my friends were like, we're going camping, we're going to do this. And it was like, no, I'm just sitting in my room doing this thing again and writing this scene again and doing this again. And, so there was a lot of sacrifice. And, for me also like with income too, because I since 2010, I think, I worked 3 days a week. And, some people would say to me, oh, like, it's so cool. You're so lucky you work part-time. I was like, no, I just don't get paid for 2 days a week. And so I do, 3 days so that I could then also have 2 days and then the weekend. So it would be a 4-day writing week. yeah. So, but that, you know, meant sacrificing both social life as well as, you know, income. So
I feel like it's a really horrible question to ask now, especially Victorian writers who have just been through another lockdown. But have you developed a balance that you're happy with in your writing? I'm just curious because you're talking about, like, you know, is it still all or nothing?
I think I'm very poor, and as a Libran, it's probably like it's something that it's the ever elusive balance. But
Yeah.
like I've never been massively good at. That's why I did the 4-day slot, and I know that not everyone can do that, and especially also if like people have kids and things like that too, and other commitments. I personally really need to go into the zone to get into, you know, to get really a large amount of words down. And there's this kind of decision that I make. And I was sort of talking about it to someone. And I was like, I can go into that state where I'm like basically just eating, you know, like baby food or like whatever the, like just like out of a pot, not washing my hair and not leaving the house for 5 days and just like getting so many words down. Or I can have this life where I'm like, I do an exercise thing, I see a friend, I get this many words done. And it's like, you know, both you can yield word count with both, but the other one, I get so much more done, but the cost to my health and my social life and my mental health too is huge. But it's like, you know, you have to go a little crazy sometimes too, like if you really want to go into it. But yeah, I think all writers have to adapt to their life circumstance too. So like I have friends who have kids and obviously they can't just wake up first thing in the morning and sit down and write because they have to do all the, you know, childcare and school run and that sort of thing. And then after school. And so there are benefits to me sort of having the life that I have, that I can choose to do that. But I also have to look after myself physiologically and mentally. So in short, I have not found my balance and I oscillate between both.
Yeah. Okay, I was going to ask you about your average writing day, but I think you just told us you just write like a lot of the time.
I do. I mean, like I'm not happy when I'm not, and that's the truth, because I'll just feel guilty and weird. And I mean, I know a lot of people say, and this is probably like, I don't know if this is great advice or not, but I've read a lot of stuff like, you know, on Twitter and people saying like, you know, this is like, you know, sitting around thinking is writing. And it's like, it is, but it isn't. Like only writing is writing. Like everything that is in your head is wonderful and is part of the creative process, but putting the words actually down on the page, that's writing, because that's what's going to be read. And I think like say at RMIT when I was, you know, really learning about you know, the craft of writing and story, which was really helpful. I think I read a lot of manuals and how-to kind of books, and there's so many exercises and things like that where it's like, you know, write about your character, do all of this sort of stuff. And like I'm not trying to like, you know, diss that, but I feel like that actually happens via writing. Like there are no kind of like, I feel like a lot of those things are kind of like sort of elaborate forms of procrastination in a way, which, you know, you everybody procrastinates. I mean, I watch like a lot of documentaries and things like that. And then I'm like, that's research. And it is, but also it isn't writing. So
Okay, so I am going to now ask you specifically about I Shot the Devil, which is your upcoming novel.
Yeah.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about the book?
Yeah, I mean, you know, if we just look at the description of it first, and then I can give you a little bit of background as we're talking a little bit about sort of like I guess a semi-historical novel, really, in a way, which I'm sort of wrapping my head around.
I'm going to sneeze. I felt like I was going to sneeze.
God bless you, as we're talking about the Satanic Panic.
Yeah.
So I Shot the Devil, I'll hold up the lovely cover.
Yay.
That's the back. So it's set in 1994 and 2010 respectively. It's a parallel narrative which is set in a fictionalized town in Long Island called Southport. The story follows my flawed and emotionally arrested narrator, Erin Sloan, who is a journalist who's been tasked about writing about a 16-year-old murder, the murder of Andre Villiers in the West Cypress Roads woods, a crime she was actually intimately involved with. Erin's investigation into what seems like a seemingly senseless murder by a group of metalhead misfits, led by Ricky Hell, a devilishly handsome high school dropout, leads her to uncover seemingly upstanding monsters who are closer to home than she ever imagines. And as her investigation into the historic crime picks up its pace, so does the threat to her life. I Shot the Devil weaves a narrative of broken childhoods, abusive relationships, and rape culture, and I refer to it as Me Too crime fiction. It's basically obsessed with reflecting our cultural obsession with rewriting and resolving the traumas of our past. Yeah, so that's a little synopsis. But do you want me to talk about the true crime aspect?
Yes, I was going to ask you, so what sparked this story?
Yeah, so I think so at the time I was started my PhD in 2015, and I'd been thinking about writing a memoir, and initially it was based on a crime that I had been sort of aware of. That was a friend of my stepdad was a Black Widow case, and that was in Florida in the late 80s, early 90s. And then I started to realize that I didn't really want to write a memoir, but I wanted to sort of write a crime novel that incorporated a couple of true crimes. So I started writing, I guess it's like a true crime collage. But the main crime is actually something that I uncovered in like the corridors of the true crime corridors of YouTube. I watched a documentary called Satan and the Suburbs, and it was just basically about this case, and I didn't really know much about it. But it's called the Ricky Casso case. And if you look it up, it's really interesting. Basically, it was part of the Satanic Panic. So it was actually 1984. And it was about a group of like teens that were taking PCP in the woods. So Ricky Casso had murdered his friends, or incited his friends to murder their friend called Gary Lowers, and at the time it was being reported as a ritualized crime. It had all the hallmarks of this sort of sensational crime, and Ricky Casso actually died in police custody, but there was these crazy pictures of him looking like sort of like the pictures that you see of Richard Ramirez, you know, really wild eyes. I think he was wearing a Mickey Mouse t-shirt, and like the picture just went kind of viral in that time. It was on the cover of Rolling Stone. You can see like skateboard decks have pictures of Ricky Casso. Like he was called the Acid King. But the case was really interesting to me because none of it was about Satan. None of it was about the occult. It was about a drug deal that went wrong. And it was just a real sign of the times. And I was really interested in the Satanic Panic. I'd grown up in the 80s in Catholic school, and I was really interested in like youth subculture and youth panic. And so basically I relocated the crime, fictionalized it heavily. I only use aspects of it because I'm not really interested in like replicating the crime or replicating a crime. I just want to use what the crime signifies sort of as a kind of a hook to hang the story. So yeah, basically I utilized aspects of that crime and then the Black Widow crime and then a bunch of obviously fictionalized crimes. Yeah. But that's the primary crime that I had used to kind of like as a jumping off or a springboard, so to speak.
I love how you explore some very powerful themes, really, in this crime novel, and one of them is the way that your socioeconomic background will sort of show how you are treated by the law, by the police, if you commit a crime. So I just think there are some very powerful conversations that are kind of being had in your book as well. So I guess I'm going to ask now, do you want to read a little bit of it?
Yes, that'd be great. Yes, okay.
And I'll just, while you're getting organised, I'm just going to remind everyone to put questions, if they've got any questions, if you put them in the chat, and we will come to them a bit later. But now Ruth's going to read a little bit from
So this just follows Erin Sloan after she's been tasked with writing about the Southport 3, which is a little bit of a nod to the West Memphis 3. Okay. I wrote down the date, 31 October 1994, the story's anchor, my gateway to the past. The murder happened on Halloween. Yep, Halloween. Imagine how much the media loved that shit. RP moved us to Amityville in early 1994 and had taken me out of Roosevelt High and into an all-girl Catholic institution called St. Mary's. The night Ricky Hale was shot and died in the dirt, I was on the cool bathroom tiles in a twilight state of consciousness, under the impression he'd ditched me. I was drunk on grief, rage, and cheap vodka, plus I'd taken a few pain pills. I was listening to Anything, a song by an 80s band called Dramarama, on repeat. Rewind and listen, rewind and listen. I was taken to the hospital later the next day with severe alcohol poisoning. Now in the car, I wrote my title, Satan and the Suburbs, the Southport 3 and the Making of a Satanic Teen Thrill Kill Murder. Follow-up. 1. Interview the Southport 3. 2. Steve Shearer, look up his arrest history / rep with narco cops. Track down Ricky Hale's family. Locate records of dealing arrest, sheet / juvie offences. 3. Similar cases of minority kids being shot / satanic murders, etc. Andre Villiers, talk to living relatives, victim profile, interest in Satanism and occult, and police interview Kathy Carver. Panic hummed around me in the car. The writing wasn't helping this time, the drone of the radio and the sound of my jagged breathing. I winced as the radio announcer brayed that it was Flashback Friday, and the monotonous stream of Billy Joel's We Didn't Start the Fire commenced. I switched the radio off. There were rumours surrounding Andre, very loud whispers that suggested he liked to harass and sometimes hurt girls, that he liked it rough, that his favourite kind of girl was young, extremely young. Before he died, I'd heard that he'd been questioned over Kathy Carver's disappearance, but I must have blocked it out. Why else would I forget something so significant? Kathy had been my sister's friend. Her disappearance had been a huge deal, and only months later, my sister died. So thinking of Andre Villiers as a victim, I experienced a genuine episode of cognitive dissonance. My father had seen multiple violent deaths, and as a rookie reporter, I reported on homicides so vile, I still struggle to process the details. My father's adage was this: no one deserves to be murdered, but some people were seriously asking for it. And over the last few years, I'd come to conclude that he was right. Andre was one of those people. One time we were in the back seat of Danny's car, a skunk fug around us when Andre joke-choked me. I don't recall where the others were. All I know was that only he and I remained in the vehicle. 1 minute we were talking, smoking. The next, autoerotic by local heavy metal band Hellbound came on. The lead singer death growling, wrap my hands around your throat. My engine starts at your death choke. It seemed like play. His lanolin and weed-scented hands, not the hands of a gardener, but the hands of a gamer or someone chore-averse, were on my neck, enacting the song's lyrics, perhaps even posturing to be sexy. Guys hurt you as flirtation back then. Maybe they still do. Something very serious passed over his face, like a cloud had moved over the car. My instincts screamed that something terrible was happening. What did his eyes look like? Rumour had it that he wore tinted contacts, that they were pale blue, and I could read nothing in them. I thought of the Terminator movie afterwards, because it seemed to me that whatever was happening was at once mechanical and dangerous. Finally, my fist went out and connected with his gut, and it was like hitting jello, which immediately firmed. This all took place in 10 seconds, max 15. He laughed it off and I joined him. After, cursing him out first, I even stayed to smoke a cigarette, and then I left and sobbed into the bushes. There were finger bruises around my neck that lasted for a week, bruises that were hidden by my mum's old arsenal of concealers and foundations. I knew not to revert to turtlenecks or scarves because my friends Uppy and Danny would assume that I was concealing hickeys. Why did I stay? How could I have laughed it off? I guess I didn't want to be the crazy bitch who made trouble. I made sure not to be alone with Andre again, and the occasion was forgotten. But nothing ever is, not really. Now I felt the ghostly memory of his soft hands around my neck.
I love this book. I can't wait for everyone to start reading it. I know book proofs are out at the moment and we're getting some incredible buzz building. But it's probably, it's hard because you aren't actually published yet. But I know there are probably people who would ask you about the publishing process, what it feels like to like finish the manuscript, submit it, get a contract, but then just curious about that editorial process. So do you want to talk about that? I think that kind of fascinates people because you think you're finished, don't you?
Yeah. Well, I guess also because I had written the book as part of my PhD, so I'd been through about 3 structural edits. And then, obviously I had 2 editors too. So, 3 if you count the first edit for the PhD, and then 2 edits because 2 publishing houses. I think because there were structural changes, and I've always been quite grateful for structural advice because I feel like I would pay someone to help me with that. So it sort of like felt like a bonus, if you know what I mean. I feel like the edits were pretty fair, and I feel like there weren't that many of them. I think with my first book, it would have been probably a lot more arduous. But that said, you are kind of, I find it surprising because you think, okay, we're done now. I didn't quite realize, quite how many then, because, you have your structural edits and then you have, another copy edit, and then you think, actually, we need to work on this bit. So, it is a lot more protracted than you think. But I think because I'd already had a bit of structural editing going on, and, obviously I had to submit it for PhD, very different book though. I had done quite a bit on the manuscript, so...
I know, because we go to the printer in about 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. There's always something I think that was also hard because we had a break, and then I got this last one back to say, hey, and I thought, yeah, cool, this will just be on the line stuff, like picking up on, or like little things that you made a mistake about, like, little things that say maybe hadn't been picked up. But I really wanted to go in and do another edit, which is really, it's just like you could never stop. You could never stop wanting to improve, or change a book. But that's when, like it has to be taken away from you at some point. Because it will just never end.
Yeah. So looking back from this point, do you have anything that has surprised you as a writer?
Well, yeah, I think how many people actually are closet writers when you tell people you're writing a book. Like, honestly, like you, and weirdly enough, I think that makes people very amenable to you. Like, it's like I feel like there's actually so much more respect that you get from people, but then oftentimes they want you to read their manuscript.
Yeah. So do you do the friend swap? You mentioned the friend swap about when you're a writer, and I think it's fabulous if you have a community of writers.
I really so like, I mean, I think because also like I went to RMIT, which is a very supportive writing community, and the friends that you make for me, I've never been massively big on big group workshops. I don't really sort of thrive in those situations, but I made some really good friends. One of my really, really dear friends, Jay Carmichael, who I hope if he's listening, hello, Jay. I've seen you for a while. He was just so helpful and so, good with like helping me out with like reading my synopsis and, competition submissions. Like, and I've had other friends, we swap, it's like, can you send me your Richell Prize submission? Can you send me what does your synopsis look like? What do you think of this? What could I lose? And yeah, those friendships are so invaluable. And yeah, just for, especially when you're like in submission and competition entering phases, that's super helpful. And, and then, also obviously it has to be reciprocal. You've got to, and also like, I mean, it was interesting with Jay and I because he's a literary fiction writer and I'm a crime fiction writer, and that doesn't matter. It's like, you don't have to be in the same genre. You just have to, trust each other's judgment and, like have a reciprocal agreement. Like, will you help me with this and I'll help you with this? So, yeah.
I think that's the really a really important thing too, to know that if you ask someone to do something, that you give back as well.
Oh,
it's
totally.
Like, yeah.
There are points when I'm like, I know the turnaround, and I don't mind if people send me stuff, because I do get friends who are writers and in really different genres too, who'll be like, could you read this real quick? And because I'm a really fast reader, I can usually do it, and I don't mind. But yeah, like I one wants it to be a reciprocal sort of thing where you can help each other out. And you need that, because I think most writers, unless they're really loaded, can't afford someone to just be like, hey, I'm going to get an air task, go to do that. But like on occasion, if it's something's been really important, I have paid someone to do that. And, I haven't been rich at the time, but I, like one of the editors that helped me with Nothing Gold to get it to an agent ages ago, gave me a huge, gave me lots of additional support and mentorship too from RMIT. That's, I think, like I said, it's part of that, being part of a community is really, really important. So
I'm just looking at the time. I can't believe that has gone so fast, because
yeah.
I feel like we could talk, and there are some questions, but
yeah.
I just wanted to say, firstly, do you have sort of a few fast tips for writers that you would like to give, or is it not easy to do that?
No, I think that's easy. I think, well, I would say with competitions and submissions to competitions and things like that, to do it in, to not exhaust yourself with that, because I think I got really, really obsessed with doing that for a while, and then I got really burnt out. And like, I think you also have to remember to replenish your kind of emotional reserve, because writers are actually really sensitive people largely, and yet they face rejection. Probably like actors and writers are kind of on par with the rejection sort of thing. And yeah, so like you also need to focus on work and sort of like refilling the well too, because you're going to get a lot of rejections, and it's just part of the process. Like it's just, and even if you're an established writer, you're still going to get heaps of rejections. So I would say, do that for a bit. If it doesn't feel good, stop doing that for a bit, and, and to focus on the work itself too, and not the outcome, because there were points where it's just like, I felt like I just really wanted affirmation all the time. And it was like, because you're alone. It's not like singing or playing music. You don't get an audience like giving you applause at the end and saying that was a great show. But you're not going to get that affirmation that quickly either. So it's sort of like you have to stop chasing the affirmation, get fulfillment in what you're doing, enjoy what you're doing, and then, be in a good place when you submit. Also, yes, obviously, if you're like me and not really strong in copy editing and things like that, to get someone else to look over your stuff and swap with friends and build up your writing friends. That's really important. But also don't crucify yourself if you make mistakes, and send, for me, I was sending off stuff and I remember seeing a typo and I just burst into tears. I was like, I feel like such an idiot. And I was like, sure, that's not ideal, but give yourself a break. You're a human being. You don't have to be perfect. It's a really hard, it's a hard job. You have to be kind of kind to yourself too. So, yeah.
I love your advice to find sort of affirmation or contentment in the actual work and the writing, because publishing is hard. Even the best books, when they're published, it's about, you're publishing to a market. It is a commercial kind of venture. And sometimes the best books don't get the sales that you'd hoped. So
it's so true. And I think I know that no matter what the outcome is or was for me, I never ever would not be doing that. I would still be working 3 days a week and writing those other 2 days and on the weekends and on holidays, because it's that's my real job. And so the external stuff is great and it's important, and I'm really grateful and happy about that. But at the same time, I still would have been doing it anyway, because because you love it, because you love it. There's no, you can't do it if you don't love it, because to be frank, there's just so many negatives too. Loneliness, isolation, mental anguish.
We've got some questions, so we might go to them. So from Virginia, her question is, do publishers take you more seriously with formal creative writing qualifications, for example, tertiary degree, or do courses through writers' centres or working with a writing coach help your credibility too? And well, you can speak to that, because do you find that you were treated differently with your writing?
I don't, but I do think it gave me the ability to, so I'd both been edited and had edited other people. I'd workshopped heaps, so I was able to I think, and you could probably hopefully answer this honestly if I said this, but I think I'm pretty good at being edited. I'm not I'm pretty experienced at being edited, so I could improve the manuscript because I knew how to take that on board, and I understood that process, But yeah, I definitely I don't think so. I think with the PhD in particular, I've noticed a lot of contemporary writers are doing that now, largely because mentorship, as it, say an older writer or a senior writer to an emerging writer, doesn't exist anymore in this kind of, because we're in a kind of neoliberal kind of society and everyone, wants to get and needs to get paid. So I think a lot of people are going through the PhD program for that mentorship, as well as, I guess they're getting affirmed and supported by an established writer, which gives them credibility. So that's one thing I will say to that. I think RMIT, for example, or schools like that, where it's a kind of a program that's really industry orientated, you make those contacts. And so, and if you make kind of good relationships with your teachers, for example, that might get you contacts and that sort of thing. I guess people understand that you have the discipline and the tenacity and also the interest and passion to carry through the project. But I think with competitions and mentorships that are being offered through publishers, and all these programs that are coming about, you don't need to have that, and that they can form that kind of platform. So yeah.
Yeah, and I would say, Virginia, that publishers, as a publisher, I look at the work and the writing talent, and it doesn't matter if you've done a degree or not. That what you're looking at is the work. So, and then we've got another question from Fabrice. Your writing, your writing process. Do you only ever work on a single project at a time, or do you alternate between different stories, journaling, and other writing?
It's a good one. Yeah, so I generally am a lot better as a single tasker. And I prefer to write one project at a time. I have recently tried to do, I mean, I will do little shorts, or I'm always journaling anyway, because that's kind of just like a practice that I do. If anyone hasn't read The Artist's Way, you should read it, because the morning pages are a really good thing to get into practice doing. It's very kind of, it's a bit gaudy, and a lot of people don't like that aspect of the Artist's Way, but it's really good for just cultivating your inner artist. So yeah, I journal and that sort of thing. I probably would write a short story, but writing 2 novels at once, I started doing that sort of semi-recently, and I found that really, really tough. I just prefer to, like, one big, like, I don't know, I guess that's like kind of like having twins, but like maybe for different parents, different fathers, I don't know.
That's hilarious. Okay, I'm going to ask you a question now. A lot of people say, and I kind of agree, that to be a writer, you have to be a reader. And I think I recently had an argument with someone because they didn't agree. They said you can write and not read other people's things, but I just don't agree. What do you think about that? And I also wanted to see what your 5 favorite books and writers, and there's such a hard,
I said how hard that was. I agree with you, and I think also, especially in a formative way, it has to be like that. So something weird has happened to me since I did my PhD, and that's that I find fiction a lot harder to read, and I think it's also because my writing has taken over my reading, and also like I think also because when I'm writing and then I pick up like a fiction book, I can't see it as a fictional product. I can't like suspend disbelief. I'm like, oh, I see what they're doing there, and then this is happening here, and then it's like I can't get out of my own head. And it's sort of like, muddies the waters for me, and which is such a shame. But like, I'm actually reading a really great book at the moment. Here it is, All That I Remember About Dean Kohler, and it's so good, and I'm actually really immersed. But I've been reading a lot of non-fiction and memoir. That's actually a lot easier for me. It's just, I don't know, it's like a byproduct of writing too much, which is an annoying thing to say on a level, because a lot of writers are like, it's easier to read than write. I remember seeing Catherine Devaney in conversation, and she said that, and I was like, it was like 2009. I was like, who would ever say that? And then I was like, now that's me, because I write more than I read. But yeah, so my favorite books. So this is a real toughie, because I have like I'm going to do my seminal favorite books, okay? Yeah. Because I feel like I have like contemporary favorites, and then I have like the seminals. So one of my favorite books is Dracula, and I feel like I'm always kind of in a weird way sort of including that in my fiction. Luna Park by Bret Easton Ellis is one of my other favorite books. I reread that a lot. The Information by Martin Amis, which actually didn't do as well as a lot of his other books, but it's just like one of my favorites, about authorial envy. And I just feel like it's so clever and funny. Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin is one of my favorite books. The Talented Mr. Ripley by Patricia Highsmith, and anything that Patricia Highsmith has written Love and Death on Long Island by Gilbert Adair, which is another brilliant and funny book. Night Letters by Robert Desai. And I will say one of my new favourite books is My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshe. And I just think that is, like, it immediately went to the top of the line.
There's some I really want to read now. There's a couple there I haven't read, so I will put that on my list. But
they're like the classic-y ones, but I have like a lot of, and then I have like my crime favorites and then my poetry favorites. But yeah, those are like some classics.
And it's really interesting to me because I know when I'm editing, actually, I'm the same. If I'm editing, I can't be reading a novel. Like, I can't be reading a novel because I just want to get lost in that voice of that writer and that. So I don't read when I'm in a full-on edit.
Yeah,
I think like you're the same.
Yeah, it's the same. And I think it's because also when I started the PhD, because I suddenly had all this time and like I got a scholarship. So I rewrote Nothing Gold and I wrote I Shot the Devil. And then I just started this new practice of really, really, smashing words. And so I've since written like, another book and then a bit of another book and then a bit of another book. And so it's sort of like I'm in that mode and it's really hard to come out of that mode. And also I think it's like slowing down is really hard because you have to be a little bit manic to go into that state. And then reading is about slowing down. It's about concentrating and it's not, I don't know, but it is really hard because reading has been my lifelong kind of passion and escape. So being able to read and immerse myself in a truly good book is like, it's a great pleasure. So
it's just the best.
Yes.
And well, thank you so much. We're just about out of time. So I just want to say to everyone, I hope you listened to Ruth. You gave some incredibly wonderful advice. And I think the Richell Prize has got a couple more weeks until the entries close. So if anyone's out there, I think Ruth would agree with me and say, look at the Emerging Writers website and think about submitting.
Well, you've got nothing to lose. Like it's a really excellent prize. And I think that, that's the kind of mentorship that I was talking about. It's definitely worth it. I remember I kind of like, it was like Friday night and I was like, oh my God, I've got like a day. And I remember like, I was phoning my boyfriend at the time. He was at work and I was like, I'm having another coffee and I'm doing it. And I was like, so yeah, like get your decaf and your coffee on and
exactly. And be bold, be brave and back yourself like Ruth did. And who knows? But so I just want to say thank you, Ruth McIver.
Thank you.
That was I can't believe, like, I honestly, and I feel like we blinked and an hour went past.
Yeah.
And I also want to thank Ruby and Alice and Zoe and Diem and everyone at the Emerging Writers Festival team. I can't believe that we had another lockdown and you had all that to contend with again. So I just want to say thank you for all your hard work and the wonderful festival that you put together. It's just brilliant. So, and thank you to everyone that tuned in today. And also just an acknowledgement, I think, to all the Victorian writers and to you, Ruth, who have just gone through so much. And I know that has to impact on the creative process and what you do, but I hope it also might bring us some incredible work.
Yeah, I am sending a lot of love to all writers in Victoria at the moment. And, if you're not writing right now, don't feel bad. It is really, really hard. And, everyone's really traumatized here, I think. And, that the impact of that is, it's just something you can't quantify. So, just be kind to yourself, you know. For me at the moment it's like sweating blood writing.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And I think we're actually out of time, and there weren't any more questions that I could see. So I hope we answered everything that everyone was interested in. But thank you so much.
Thanks everyone for listening, and thank you, Vanessa, and to the team at EWF. Thanks everyone.
Bye.
Bye.